Nice. More scrap. 5. $294.
Great. Standing here. Love it.
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, I was turning, huh?
What do you need?
Okay. Nice. Still not high enough for that one, but I am high enough for the bone shredder, which is fucking sweet. We're gonna do that, and then the clipper on the third one. Oh, what you do? You froze or something out. Liquid sniper. Oh, God. Wait, what? Oh, God. There. Oh, cool. CCTV camera, huh? I wish I could place it on my fucking tugboat. Am I full? No, I'm not full, so I'm gonna go tap that metal node. And stir my dinner. I'm doing so good. I even went to the emergency room today, but I'm still doing so good. Like, the only real problem I have is I'm dehydrated. That's it. Fucking dumb. Voodoo Ranger. Some of it's the alcohol, some of it's just I haven't been drinking as much liquids lately, and I know I haven't. I've been, like, trying not to. Whatever. What? Oh, God. Why is this game, like, seizing over and over again? There's, like, some dude outside. This game is, like, acting up and seizing a lot. Okay, as I'm about to eat dinner, I'm going to exit this game because I don't really want the music anymore, but it was a good game. I like that game. Fun as hell. I want to burn more things on Dragon's Dogma, maybe. But 100 flame rounds and a whole bunch of other stuff. All that stuff. So let's just dump all of it, I suppose. I filled these boxes so fucking quick. Just by the largesse of other people on this server. Like, the Tommy isn't worth anything. I've got an MP5 right here. The pants aren't really worth... I mean, the pants could be used, but they're not really worth anything. Yeah, just leave a lot of the rest of it, but that's good. That we're gonna recycle those. That we'll unload and do these because we don't really need them. The spaz might be good. My dinner's starting to smell real good. Feta and tomato sauce. Let's mute the sound. I don't want to hear the chopper. And then let's go find a video to watch while I eat my dinner. Let's see. It's 7:40 in the evening. I already oh no, we haven't seen this one. This is a new PDF.
I've had this ad blocker for 1 week, and it's already blocked.
Yeah, I wonder why you're advertising ad blocking on commercials.
Over 1,000 ads. Meet Pi, a Chrome extension.
Pi ad block ads, get paid.
And that blocks ads, and it's completely free. What's really crazy is that if you opt in, Pi will actually pay you to see ads. And if it sounds too good to be true, trust me, it's not. It has thousands of 5-star reviews, plus they have a visual mode that lets you watch your ads disappear from your screen. So crazy that ads took up 42% of the page. So if you never want to see this ad again, get Pi right now.
See 0 ads a day with Pi. No.
Gavin Newsom's trans.
No, I'm not paying for that. No, I'll just skip.
And with Charlie Kirk just exposed an incoming Democrat civil war, Trump just suspended tariffs again. The huge
Trump suspended tariffs. He two-faced. Trump suspended tariffs. I never ever would have thought he would have done that. Jesus Christ. Yeah, I'm like, why are you fucking free trade, you idiot? Why are you doing that? What you doing? Okay, let's do it. Kill. And let's plate it up. Oh, yeah. ravioli. Mmm.
Huge Ukraine update.
This is too
Target
hot.
is being hit with a massive 40-day DEI boycott over Lent. We're talking about
This is too hot. I'm gonna let it cool down. I'm gonna play video games. So yeah, you keep crafting, and you. What else? We've got yeah, you and you and you and you. I don't need you. You. I suppose those, because I don't really have a use for those. Or you. Yeah, there's quite a lot to recycle. We have a lot of things stacking up in here like that. I have 100 pipes for some reason. 100 pipes. If 597 scrap. This server is a little nuts. It's insane. So go, I guess, recycle. Yeah, we're gonna go recycle. My dinner smells good. It's gonna be real good. So did Donald Trump like walk back those fucking tariffs? Because that's a good thing. I'm glad that it happened. When he sees that nobody's gonna stop him, destroy himself, he might actually maybe lead. They'll just let the Democrats will just let him destroy himself. That's the truth. They'll just stand there. They're not going to fight him. They're just going to let him destroy himself. It's not an invalid strategy. He will destroy himself. He is an idiot.
about all that and much more on today's brand new Philip DeFranco show. You daily dive into the news, how it's being covered, and how people are reacting to it. Starting with this: did Gavin Newsom just stab Democrats in the back? Right, that is a question that many people are asking after he launched his new podcast and had Charlie Kirk on as his first guest.
Charlie
Yes, by the
Kirk.
way, if you did not know, the governor of California is now officially a podcaster, with him announcing a show last week called "This is Gavin Newsom." Right, and just one of the reasons.
Why is
he's on
Gavin
the
Newsom
series
doing a
right now is
podcast as a
he chose to have
governor?
Charlie Kirk, a right-wing influencer, on his show. You know, Kirk is the co-founder of Turning Point USA. In addition to just
Turning
being
Point.
a massive figure in the right-wing space. You know, since Newsom is largely seen as one of the big leaders of the Democratic Party, as someone who might want to throw his hat into the
This
ring
is
in
so good.
2028, some were not thrilled that Newsom chose to have this conversation with people writing. I will be voting for a candidate in the Democratic primary who doesn't promote Charlie Kirk, as well as who do Democrats think is the audience for Gavin Newsom in a podcast with Charlie Kirk. But very notably, this also is some think that it's a good idea, right? When Newsom announced his podcast, he said that one of his goals was to talk to people that he disagrees with. You know, with that, you have some thinking that politicians like Kamala Harris could have learned from this playbook. Writing everything about this approach, guess, tone is smart. Gavin Newsom is the only Democrat who actually seems to be thinking about the last election and adapting to what he learned. As well as the thing I like about Newsom is that, like Buttigieg, he not only does not shy away from talking to right-wingers, indeed, he seeks them out. Dialogue is helpful. But some people were not thrilled with the actual dialogue itself, with the part facing the most criticism being a moment where trans athletes came up.
You right now should come out and be like, you know what? The young man who's about to win the state championship in the long jump in female sports,
Right.
that shouldn't happen. You as the governor should step out and say no.
No, and I appreciate,
But like, would you do something like that? Would you say no men in female sports?
well, I think it's an issue of fairness. I completely agree with you on that. So that's easy to call out, the unfairness of that. There's also a humility and a grace, that these poor people are more likely to commit suicide, have anxiety and depression. And the way that people talk down to vulnerable communities is an issue that I have a hard time with.
I like what he said.
So both things I can hold in my hand.
And so with that, you had outlets
He's
like Politico
right.
characterizing this as Newsom, quote, breaking with Democrats on this issue because he agreed with Kirk on the fairness of trans athletes. There being people that were upset with Newsom's rhetoric there, thinking it will not even help his cause. Writing, what's great about Dems agreeing with GOP transphobia is that it earns no votes with conservatives who would never believe Gavin Newsom, so it's just cravenly hateful for no political benefit. As well as the issue with Gavin Newsom is that he stands for nothing except his own path to power. He's willing to sell anyone out if he can benefit. And this is you had a California state senator also releasing a statement condemning Newsom's comments, saying the governor has had many courageous moments.
It's crazy, but what they just said, he stands for nothing except his own path to power. He's willing to sell anyone out if he can benefit. That's how I am, which is kind of annoying. This is one of the reasons why I'm not in politics. That is how I am. I've been that way.
Is that he stands for nothing except his own path to power. He's willing to sell anyone out if he can benefit. And this is you had a California state senator also releasing a statement condemning Newsom's comments, saying the governor has had many courageous moments over the decades supporting LGBTQ people. This is not one of those moments. Charlie Kirk is a vile bigot, and standing with him on this issue is profoundly disturbing. And adding, the Republican strategy to eliminate trans people is to create fake moral panics to falsely paint trans people.
What
as
is
threats.
this?
Trans people are just trying to live their lives. So
Yep.
also very notably on the other side, people didn't see Newsom's comments as so black and white and thought that he was more riding the fence. So also very notably on the other side of this, you had people saying, what he's trying to do here is not have a black and white conversation. Right? Saying that he supports trans people, defends trans people, even in the conversation that he's trying to have, saying, I do not like how you're talking about this vulnerable group of people. But at the same time, offering an olive branch of, in this particular setting of trans people in sports.
I thought he said
there
it
is a
well.
potential issue. And notably there, according to polling, this is actually a majority opinion even among Democrats. Or with a recent New York Times Ipsos survey finding that among Democrats or people leaning Democrats, 67% said that transgender athletes should not be allowed to compete with women. But there's also pointing to moments where Newsom defended his stances on other aspects of LGBTQ rights, including a California law that prevents schools from forcing teachers to tell parents if their students identify as LGBTQ in the classroom, or meaning that teachers can choose to tell parents if they want, but they cannot be fired if they chose not to. On the podcast, even though Kirk pressed him on it, Newsom defended it.
The law was explicit, said you can't be fired for not snitching on a kid, not just for being trans, for being gay.
But again, the reactions were big and varied, especially depending on where.
Why are you
went
guys
online.
talking
Among
about
those
this?
criticizing Newsom,
You're the
they felt that overall
California
it's been a lot of
governor.
time.
Did it happen in your state? Why are you guys talking about trans like this so much? It seems right wing.
Caving. Writing things like the way Charlie Kirk has Gavin Newsom sprinting to the right in this interview is something to behold, saying Charlie didn't move an inch. And actually, because Newsom struck such a chord with his comments on trans athletes, even Kirk himself wrote, looks like the Democrat civil war is brewing. Right? And so with all this, I'd really love to know your thoughts. Right? Whether it be you sounding off more on just the prospect of Gavin Newsom having this pod.
No, a lot of Democrats are slightly anti-trans. It's one of the things I dislike about the party. If I was a member of the political party, they wouldn't be allowed to discriminate against anybody except the other party or other parties, That's it. You're not allowed to discriminate in my party. Not at all.
Podcast and what he's saying his goals from it are, and or your thoughts on the split of opinion or opinions in general regarding trans athletes in sports. But then, next up from that, we need to talk about President Trump preparing to now sign an executive order that will dismantle the education department, according to a draft of the order that was reportedly obtained by numerous media outlets. And the fact that we're here, it's not really a surprise. It is something that Trump has been vowing to do for a while now. His pick to run the department, Linda McMahon, also publicly committed to unwinding the agency. And so on Monday, McMahon was officially confirmed by the Senate with all Democrats voting against her nomination. And just a few days later, Trump is now moving full speed ahead. And with that, as far as the specifics here, according to the reports, the draft order directs McMahon to, quote, take all necessary steps to facilitate the closure of the education department based on the maximum extent appropriate and permitted by law. And that last part is a super key thing to keep in mind because it really doesn't seem like the law will actually permit the Trump administration or any other administration
Or anybody else
to unilaterally dismantle the education department.
No.
Because the agency was created by Congress and many of its responsibilities as well as the major programs it administers.
Yeah, like what?
Including student loans and programs for students with disabilities, those are all written into federal law. And so as a result, legal experts widely agree that it would require an act of Congress to fully dismantle the agency or even remove key responsibilities outlined under statute. And that would almost certainly require 60 votes in the Senate.
Why are you
to break the filibuster,
dismantling
which,
this
of course,
government?
Democrats would never go for. Hell, even McMahon herself acknowledged during her confirmation hearing truly eliminating the department would require congressional approval. They're also notably conceding that several programs are codified in law and can't be slashed without Congress, including several that impact students with disabilities and other vulnerable groups. And so as far as what McMahon can actually legally do, that remains unclear. Because again, the Education Department oversees a ton of important initiatives, many of which are either delegated to the agency.
It's
under
weird
law
that students are considered a vulnerable group, but they are. They're a vulnerable group in the respect that they're like college students and they come through and they blow $100 grand, so they're vulnerable. They're like vulnerable to all these fucking sharks and all these people do treat them like they're mackerel. It's disgusting. I know because I've been there. I took out about $60,000 in student loans, and I have not paid them back. But I mean, they forgave that debt before I got around to paying them back. Thank God. So I never spent $1 on my education. That's how it should be in America. Excuse you. I don't feel shame for this. Not in any way or form. I took advantage of something that the government should do, which is encourage people to go to fucking school and get a college education, which I did. I went to fucking, Community College of Denver for 2 years, and I got most of my way to a degree. And then I stopped. I was like, I have a degree in literature. I don't think I'm ever going to use it. I didn't either, and I know I won't. I know I wouldn't have used that. I know I wouldn't have used it. Its use in the real world to me is like zero. You're essentially a librarian at that point. You could do academia and research, but you would have to prove that your research is like good. And that amount of reading and time and work for what? A librarian's salary? Fuck no. And I bombed out of school. I was like, I didn't bomb out of school. I just had a completion rate that they wouldn't allow me to stay. And I admit that I fucked up, but I mean, I thought I could just withdraw from any classes that I didn't like, and they wouldn't affect me. They would just let me take my classes. But no, they would not let me withdraw from classes. That's what my mom told me to do. My mother was like, you can withdraw from any class that you're failing. All the time they can see that I tried. All the time they can see it. They can see that I tried. All the time they can see that I tried. It's like the big part of it. I farted. And like my parents can see that I tried. Everybody can see that I tried. I did all this time in school. I tried, and the system that they built did not, I don't know what you would call it. It did not go. Like that system just did not go in my favor. It was quite the opposite. Like the system kind of ended for me, and I ended out of school very quickly. Look at how much scrap I'm about to pull off of all of this tech trash, which is just insane. It's 940. Yeah, 940. I pulled 2,453 scrap, which is just insane. I can buy my mini heli tomorrow, but I've got to do research first. Like all of these things. I've got to research the Nomad suit. I've got to research all of this stuff. But I mean, it's it's all in line. It's all in line. I already have a T3 day one, so who cares, I tried very hard all of my life to do the things that they wanted me to do. And in the end, I just ended up pursuing my own interests. I hate to say it, but I did. I just sort of pursued my own interests. I tried to be a member of the party scene. I tried to be a druggie. I tried to be a fucking, I tried to be so many things, like a drug dealer and all this other shit. I tried to be a lot of things, but I can't reconcile, trying with this community.
Would be difficult for another department to manage, especially at a time.
They don't really condone it. They see you trying, and they're like, oh, you forgot about this. Or, oh, that's so expensive, you've got to come up with many thousands of dollars. Or, though that, and it's just like...
When Musk and Trump are dramatically cutting the federal workforce, leaving many Kyle bigot, and standing with him on this issue is profoundly disturbing. And adding, the Republican strategy to eliminate moments over the decades supporting LGBTQ people. This
did you
is not
skip
one of those
it?
moments. Charlie Kirk
Yes,
is
you
a
did.
vile bigot, and standing with him on the student loans
You
and
skipped
programs
it.
for students with disabilities, those are all written into federal law. And so as a result, legal experts widely agree that it would require an act of Congress to fully dismantle the agency or even remove key responsibilities outlined under statute. And that would almost certainly require 60 votes in the Senate to break the filibuster, which of course Democrats would never go for. I mean, hell, even McMahon herself acknowledged during her confirmation hearing truly eliminating the department would require congressional approval. But they're also notably conceding that several programs are codified in law and can't be slashed without Congress, including several that impact students with disabilities and other vulnerable groups. And so as far as what McMahon can actually legally do, that remains unclear. Because again, the Education Department oversees a ton of important initiatives, many of which are either delegated to the agency under law or would be difficult for another department to manage, especially at a time when Musk and Trump are dramatically cutting the federal workforce, leaving many agencies understaffed to handle the duties they're already being given. So that's why we've seen many experts agree that the most likely scenario is that the Trump administration is going to make a wide range of questionably legal plays here that will inevitably be challenged in lawsuits. For the Team Trump game plan has been see what sticks, see what doesn't, and let's take what we can all the way up to the Supreme Court and see what happens. This seems like the going strategy for basically everything they've done. But with all that said, as far as what actually is going to happen next, a big thing to remember is that the draft version of this order circulating right now is still that, right? Reportedly a draft version. So, if everything that we've learned so far is true, it still could be subject to change, though it's also unclear if the core substance would really be altered at all. Also, as for when we'll actually see Trump signing a final version, sources initially told multiple outlets that it will come soon, potentially even as soon as today. But there, I'll note that this morning we saw Trump's press secretary responding to circulating reports in a post on X, writing, "More fake news. President Trump is not signing an executive order on the Department of Education today." Which begs the question, what part is she saying is fake news, right? Is he signing it tomorrow or a different day, or is there no executive order? But then, next up, let's talk about it. Trump is already walking back his massive tariffs on Mexico and
What? He's walking it back. There's no way.
But, sort of. Because after previously issuing a 1-month delay, Trump on Tuesday officially imposed 25% tariffs on almost all products from two of our biggest trading partners. But then, just this morning, Trump announced that he has granted another 1-month delay for the tariffs.
What kind of businessman fucks his business partners? A piece of shit like him.
Goods from Mexico. With him writing on Truth Social that after speaking to Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum, he has agreed to temporarily exempt Mexico from paying tariffs on goods that trade under the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Agreement, or USMCA, which notably is a free trade agreement that Trump himself signed during his first term in office. Right? And notably, that move coming one day after Trump announced that he would be giving U.S. automakers who operate under the USMCA a 1-month exemption from complying with the tariffs on Mexico and Canada following a meeting with major companies. But then, after that, the Trump administration giving the public some very mixed signals about whether other industries would be exempt. But on one hand, you had Vice President J.D. Vance suggesting that other sectors would not get carve-outs, saying a number of industries have reached out to us to ask for exceptions to the tariff. Trump wants tariffs to apply broadly. He doesn't want to have 500 different industries getting 500 different carve-outs. But then, when the press secretary was asked about other carve-outs, she said that Trump is, quote, open to hearing about additional exemptions. And then, this morning, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick told CNBC that tariffs on both Canada and Mexico would likely be delayed, with him arguing that both countries, quote, have done a good job offering us ever more work on stopping fentanyl at the border. But this is the Truth Social post announcing the exemptions for Mexico, mentioned nothing about Canada, with him writing that the delay will be in place for Mexico alone until April 2nd, and adding, I did this as an accommodation and out of respect for President Sheinbaum. Our relationship has been a very good one, and we are working hard together on the border, both in terms of stopping illegal aliens from entering the United States and likewise stopping fentanyl. Thank you to President Sheinbaum for your hard work and cooperation. Now also with this, something that potentially plays into it is that this announcement comes just days before the Sunday deadline that Sheinbaum set to announce retaliatory tariffs against the U.S. Because unlike Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, she held off on any immediate action until she could speak with Trump and emphasize her desire for some kind of agreement. They're also thanking Trump in a post on X today, writing, we had an excellent and respectful call in which we agreed that our work and collaboration have yielded unprecedented results within the framework of respect for our sovereignties, and adding, we will continue to work together, particularly on migration and security issues, which include reducing the illegal crossing of fentanyl into the United States as well as weapons into Mexico. Right now, as the reporting as far as what's going to happen with Canada, there's been no additional news about whether they'll also be granted a similar delay for tariffs on goods under the USMCA. Because on one hand, you have Lutnick's comments from this morning about Canada being likely included, and we've also seen Canadian government sources telling the BBC that the country is expecting an exemption of the same nature. But at the same time, you also have Trump repeatedly attacking Trudeau on Truth Social and claiming that he is trying to use the tariffs for political gain. With him, for example, in one post today saying that Trudeau is using the tariff problem, which he has largely caused, in order to run again for prime minister. Which, one, that's not how it works. People don't run for prime minister the same way that you run for president in the U.S. Right? It's a parliamentary system, and usually the leader of whichever party has the most seats in the House of Commons after a general election becomes the prime minister. And two, Trudeau has said that he'll step down as prime minister after his party selects a new leader this weekend. And notably, when asked during a news conference just today if he would consider staying on as prime minister in a caretaker role amid all the uncertainty with the U.S. tariffs, Trudeau literally said, no, I will not be. Also, with this, while Trudeau said that Lutnick's comments about the likely delay for Canada was a promising sign, he added, I can confirm that we will continue to be in a trade war that was launched by the United States for the foreseeable future. So for now, we'll have to wait to see what happens with Canada and if they're given the same delay as Mexico, as well as if there are any additional exemptions that are made either in the near future or once we reach the April deadline. And thus continues the will they, won't they roller coaster that is Trump tariffs, which if you put it that way, it kind of sounds like a rom-com. Except instead of wondering if the rabbi and the podcaster can get together and that relationship can work, we're left wondering if cars, aluminum, steel, steal a bunch of stuff Americans buy, it's going to be 25% more, and or if we're flirting with a global recession. And apparently, at least for this chapter, we didn't have to wait that long. Because literally, as I was uploading today's show, we got the news that Trump signed an executive order formalizing the 1-month delay, and plot twist, the order does in fact include Canada. Though still, according to The Guardian,
really?
Trump did say he was still ready to impose reciprocal tariffs on both
Everything that he ran on, he's just backing off of. When you hit the wall, you just hit the wall, didn't you? You hit the wall. What can you do? You hit the wall. There's nothing you can do. You hit that wall, whether we're like, wow, you fuck me, I won't ever do business with you ever again. And they come and they like fart in your face and they're like, fuck you, you fuck me, I won't ever do business with you ever again. That's how businessmen are. And they come and they shit on Trump. They're like, nah, fuck you, I won't ever do business with you ever again. And he sees it. He's like, oh no, we've lost most of our trade partners overnight. And it's me. It is you. You did do it.
in Mexico next month. And adding, during this interim period between now and April 2nd, this makes it much more favorable for our American car manufacturers. And then we'll get to more news in just a moment, but first, let this
Car
be the year that you take that
manufacturers.
side hustle or passion project to the next level. And I know how that procrastination life goes. I've been sitting on a book club idea for ages, but thanks to our friends and sponsor at Squarespace, DeFranco's book club went from a dream to done in under an hour. And seriously, if I can do it, you can do it. Squarespace has the templates and tools that you need to create and sell content, courses, physical products, physical and digital online, or just to have a portfolio. How much you put out there, how much you utilize, it's up to you. You just simply upload and customize your content with a powerful Fluid Engine editor. You can even charge one-time fees, sell subscriptions, and if you need a starting point, they've got a ton of stunning professional templates with drag and drop editing that makes site design incredibly simple, no coding required. Right, and all of this, Squarespace has been a trusted partner of the PDS for years now, and if you still haven't given them a try, ask yourself, what's holding you back? We even leverage Squarespace for our very own Daily Dip newsletter, where tens of thousands of you beautiful bastards keep up with our coverage in your inboxes,
I'm gonna
take part
die.
in daily polls, giveaways, and even access our PDS show notes with sources and links. So take the dive, kickstart your digital space today with a free trial at squarespace.com/Phil, or scan the QR code on screen. And when you're ready to launch, just use code Phil for 10% off. That's squarespace.com/Phil. But then, shifting gears from that, let's talk about why you may have seen more and more people these days saying for Vladimir Putin, Donald Trump is the gift that just keeps on giving. Because while Putin has not budged on any of his sweeping demands and prerequisites to end the war in Ukraine, you have people saying the American president just been handing him win after win. And this, as we've seen leaders in Europe getting more and more worried and a little more willing to consider a future where the U.S. isn't an ally but an adversary. And so with all that, let's start on the American side, where senior members of Trump's team have reportedly held secret talks with some of Zelensky's top political opponents. Right in there, we're talking about people including former Prime Minister Yulia Tymoshenko and Zelensky's predecessor as president, Petro Poroshenko, with them reportedly speaking via back channels about the possibility of holding presidential elections after a temporary ceasefire is agreed, but before full-scale peace talks get underway. And this is notably the idea of an early presidential election is also
Sorry, guys,
being
I forgot
pushed
I
by the Kremlin,
messed with
which
the
has wanted to
volume.
get rid of Zelensky for years now. Right? And with that, as we've talked about before, Trump officials and other Republicans have been more and more suggesting that Zelensky should step aside unless he gets fully on board with a plan to end the war rapidly, right? Even if it involves major concessions by Ukraine, with Trump even going as far as to call Zelensky a dictator based on the fact that the presidential election originally scheduled for 2024
This from
never
Trump.
happened. Though notably there, not because Zelensky canceled the election, as some have claimed, but because Ukraine's constitution states that an election can't be held while martial law is in effect. With critics of holding elections now claiming that they would likely be chaotic and leave out people serving on the front lines or living abroad as refugees and ultimately play into Russia's hands. So, notably there may be fewer Ukrainians abroad very soon. And that because the Trump administration is now reportedly planning to revoke temporary legal status for some 240,000 Ukrainians who fled Russia's invasion of their country. With this being a part of the administration's broader effort to strip legal status from more than 1.8 million migrants allowed to enter the U.S. under temporary programs launched under Biden. But in any case, we've seen the Trump administration deny that it's interfering in Ukraine's domestic politics. And the parties of both Tymoshenko and Poroshenko have issued statements defending their diplomatic activities, as well as both saying they oppose holding elections now during the war. But you also had one Republican foreign policy expert telling Politico about the Ukrainian politicians. They're all talking to Trump world, positioning themselves as people who would be easier to work with, and adding that they're people who would consent to many of the things that Zelensky is not agreeing to. Right, and all of this, as Trump's people reportedly are confident that Zelensky would lose any vote due to war fatigue and public frustration over corruption. However, with that, the most recent polling shows Zelensky would still be comfortably ahead in a race for the presidency. But that's not to say that public opinion is not shifting regarding the war. Reportedly, roughly 25% of the population supports continuing the war until Russia is fully kicked out of Ukraine. But around 2/3 are more focused on talks and want the war to end, with half of those prepared to accept major concessions by Ukraine. With a big point being, yes, there is real disagreement within Ukraine about how this war should end. But also, it appears that what Trump is doing is making it far more difficult for Ukraine to come to the negotiating table from a place of strength. And that actually brings us to the second big piece of big news out of the White House, and that is on top of suspending all American military aid to Ukraine, Trump has now paused intelligence sharing with the country. Just like halting the delivery of high-tech American defense systems, this has the potential to have serious consequences on the battlefield. Where U.S. intelligence is important to helping Ukraine both strategically in terms of understanding Moscow's next moves, but also tactically, like, for example, by providing information on Russian troop positions for weapons guidance and targeting. With one former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense and retired CIA paramilitary officer even telling the BBC that cutting off intelligence to Ukraine will have an immediate impact on its ability to defend itself, and adding, there is no way to replace the capabilities that the U.S. intelligence can provide from our European allies. And going on to say, this will likely inspire Russia to push harder on their efforts to take more terrain from Ukraine and away from the negotiating table. And notably, with all this, U.S. allies are now reportedly thinking about scaling back the intelligence they share with Washington, or with them worried that information such as identities of foreign assets could inadvertently be shared with Moscow. And these allies reportedly include Israel, Saudi Arabia, and members of the so-called Five Eyes spy alliance that's made up with the U.S. along with Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and the U.K. But this also is notably the White House is reportedly pushing to kick Canada out of the alliance. But in any case, beyond that, we're seeing Politico also reporting that these worries about the future of friendly intelligence sharing, they're also making their way into NATO more broadly. Something not just due to Trump, but also more Russia-friendly European leaders like Hungary's Viktor Orban. And that actually brings us into the whole European side of the conversation. Because just a few hours after Russian drone and missile attacks targeted his hometown, killing 4, Zelensky joined EU leaders in Brussels for an emergency summit on defense. And with that, they're reportedly close to agreeing on an €800 billion defense plan to increase European defense spending, all while individual countries are also taking action. Like Germany, for instance, they're set to raise the country's debt ceiling to allow for higher defense spending. And then, perhaps most notably, French President Macron has now said that his country is willing to discuss extending the protection afforded by its nuclear arsenal to its European allies, with him noting in a televised address yesterday that Russia is now spending 40% of its state budget in military spending, with plans to expand its army even more, saying, who can believe that today's Russia will stop at Ukraine? And with that, adding, the United States, our ally, has changed its position on this war, is less supportive of Ukraine, and is casting doubt on what will happen next. And then plainly stating, Europe's future does not have to be decided in Washington or Moscow. And one of the important things to know there is that France is the only nuclear power in the European Union. Until now, the continent's primary nuclear deterrence, it came from the United States. And so with that, you have many worried that the U.S. can no longer be counted on, and you have countries like Poland, as well as the Baltic states, quickly welcoming the French proposal. And this is the person likely to be Germany's next chancellor actually already floated the idea last month. But with that, I'll say, of course, this is not a done deal, There's opposition within France and elsewhere to the idea, including, obviously, in Russia. With us seeing, among other things, a Kremlin spokesperson today casting Macron's remarks as very, very confrontational. And then you had the country's foreign minister describing his comments as a threat against Russia and calling the idea that his country had plans to attack other European nations as stupid and delirious nonsense. Now with that, I'll say, separate from the news, as far as my opinion, I don't believe Russia. Something I'll point to there is we called that Russia was going to invade Ukraine when pretty much everyone in the space was saying that's crazy, it's outlandish, it's never going to happen. And they've shown time and time again, in addition to being a vicious, brutal regime, they're just one where you can't take what they're saying at face value, that they often are not good faith actors. But hey, that's the news, my opinion, and then I'd love to hear your opinion, whether you agree or disagree with me in those comments down below. But then from that, let's talk about how thousands of people are giving up Target for Lent. Because we just saw a boycott of the company starting yesterday on Ash Wednesday, and it'll last for 40 days, which is all my Catholics, and yeah, we're Catholics out there know it coincides with Lent. And this is faith and civil rights leaders are spearheading the effort, and organizer Pastor Jamal Bryant saying that roughly 110,000 people have signed up to participate. And this is, you have the Washington Post reporting that many of the people boycotting are parishioners at black churches. And as far as why they're holding their money back, it comes as Target was one of the many companies to roll back its DEI initiatives following Trump's inauguration and executive order on DEI, with a website on the boycott saying, in recent days, we have witnessed a disturbing retreat from DEI initiatives by major corporations, companies that once pledged to stand for justice but have since chosen the path of compromise. And adding, these rollbacks represent more than just corporate decisions, they reflect a deeper erosion of the moral moral and ethical commitments necessary to build a just society.
You guys
And
aren't
people of
good
faith
people.
cannot be silenced.
Yeah, you're not
Because
good people.
The protest aligns with Lent, they're billing it as a corporate fast and a spiritual act of resistance that will start with Target. And this is the group's also partnering with the Black Chamber of Commerce to give participants a digital directory of 300,000 Black-owned businesses to shop at instead of Target during this time. And notably, with all this, that 48 days, it's a benchmark, but depending on how things go, it could be extended. We're seeing Pastor Bryant calling Target's rollbacks disheartening and telling the Post, "I was shocked because they made a commitment to invest in Black businesses upwards of $2 billion after the death of George Floyd, and adding a company that we believed was an ally to our community suddenly had convenient amnesia under this administration." Right, and all of this is playing out as we've seen outlets noting recently that this is a pretty tricky time for Target, with the company reporting a decline in sales in February. And while, yeah, partially that could be attributed to cold weather and a slowdown of spending post-holiday season, there have also been other recent boycotts against the company, because we've seen other groups and consumers protesting Target and other companies that rolled back DEI measures over the last month and change. The data from Placer.ai also finding that Target saw a drop in foot traffic during the month of February. And while, yes, many other major companies also experienced this, that data showed that Target's drop was the biggest. So again, while Target seemingly has been the most impacted, they're just one of many companies that have been targeted with boycotts lately. We're seeing things like last week, for example, there was a one-day economic blackout for consumers, and while it's unclear how many people were participating, it was aiming to hit basically all major companies, with people there being encouraged to not shop either online or in stores, to not get fast food, and to not fill up their gas tanks. And while it's hard to figure out just how impactful a 24-hour action was, USA Today reported that some companies may have felt it, but only ever so slightly. We're seeing things like one marketing intelligence firm finding that traffic at the top 100 e-commerce sites overall went down 6% on February 28th compared to a year before, and it was down 4% compared to the week before. With one analyst telling the outlet there, "I wouldn't necessarily call it a huge impact since negative 6% is not unheard of, but it is still a weakness." So notably, as far as the big companies like Amazon, most firms found that its sales saw largely no change, with one even finding a 1% increase compared to the average over the last week. Though notably, the group that ran that 24-hour economic blackout, they still have other boycotts up their sleeve, including one that starts on Friday against Amazon-owned companies. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out, right? If the boycotts grow, if consumers get riled up, or if it was kind of just a pop and then it goes away. With going back to the one that we're going to see against Target, an interesting aspect there is you had USA Today noting that Target's market share over Black consumers, it's around 18%, and its core audience is millennials at around 38%, with both groups historically being seen as more likely to use their dollars on brands that align with their morals. In 40 days is obviously longer than a one-day boycott, so its potential for impact could be huge. But as far as the impact, it's going to come down to actions, right?
Target went red.
We'll have the next 40 days to see how it plays out. But then, next up, your little spot of sunshine in my show that otherwise just stresses people out, I'd like to introduce you to David Craning and Christina Cavanaugh. And so the way the story goes is that David here owned the very last video store in Pocatello, Idaho. And his dad was the one that actually opened the shop when David was a kid, and David kept running it despite streaming, making video stores nearly obsolete. And with that, in recent years, he's been feeling the squeeze as profits have dropped and expenses grew. So once David realized that he'd have to close, there was one question on his mind. What was he going to tell Christina? Right? You see, Christina, she has Down syndrome, she's very nearly nonverbal, and she is also the video store's best customer, right? I mean, she's been coming in 3 times a week for over 15 years with her mother, Tony, and it's a vital part of her weekly routine. And with that, Tony saying she heard David mention that he'd been thinking about shutting down for a while and telling a local news outlet. I just kept thinking, oh, maybe just one more year for the rest of our lives. They're going on to say that when she heard the news that it was actually happening, she was devastated. And with that, she recalled the last time that one of Christina's go-to video stores had shut down, with Tony saying that Christina didn't quite grasp what happened, that she doesn't understand stores closing. When they drove...
Yeah, she's like, why do stores close?
The then defunct location, Christina...
Because people move on, babe. It's a simple thing that even the most simple person must understand. Everything is moving. Everything ends. Everything begins and everything ends.
Still tried going inside, with Tony saying, her and I dropped...
Even the stupidest person must understand that everything begins and everything ends.
Drive over, and I let her get out of the car, and she goes up and there's nothing there and the doors are locked. She still wanted to go in, and it is really heartbreaking to watch the anguish. And according to Tony, the only way Christina was able to move past that was because David's video store was still open, so she still was able to maintain an integral routine. The people at David's video store, they know and they care about Christina, right? When new hires come in, they were reportedly specifically trained on how to talk to her and what to expect. With David even telling the Washington Post, they'd been coming in for years. They were almost like family. So a week before his store permanently closed, David got an idea. With them then outfitting an unused corner of the convenience store that he owned next door with shelves from the video store. And he filled them with roughly 200 DVDs, including the Disney movies that Christina specifically loves. With one of David's employees at the convenience store even nicknaming it Christina's Corner, and David adding, "It felt good to know that Tony could continue to bring Christina in. I wanted to do something nice for them both. I knew there had probably been some struggles over the years." And saying, "I've tried to keep things looking about the same as they were, even though it's small."
Goddamn right.
David first showed the new setup to Tony,
Yep.
and she said she was crying so hard she could barely thank him. They're telling the Post, David is such a humble person, and he's usually very quiet. I had no idea he'd been worrying about how closing the shop would affect Christina. I thought, my gosh, he's been losing money, but he came up with a plan just for my daughter? Who knew this guy's heart was so big? So David's video store continues to be
No, it'll crush you, this stuff. It's always the little things. It's the little things that kill.
Being selfish. It's lovely to see selfless, everyday people out there thinking of others. So that is why David Craning, sir, you don't know me, I don't know you, but you are our BAMF of the day. But then, finally today, let's talk about yesterday and some commentary brought to you by BeautifulBastard.com. Where right now, not only one, can you get our We the People are like so over it tee and or hoodie, but also two, can snag yourself any of this year's bestsellers so far, as well as three, jump in on the 50% off sale that we got running on site right now. With that, including a whole slew of awesome accessories, as well as the fucking comfiest tees and long sleeves you've ever had. But also four, even if you don't get something now, text me at 813-213-4423 to join the text line and or join the email list over on the website, because we have a new mini drop coming Sunday, Monday, and I'll give you access first. That said, let's talk about your comments yesterday. You know, understandably, a lot of the conversations there having to do with Trump's not State of the Union, with Owen saying, quote, "There will be a little disturbance, but we're okay with that," is essentially, some of you may die, but that's a risk I'm willing to take, but in economic warfare terms. And January's Child replying, "Where was this little disturbance during the campaign?" Saying all of his followers were told everything would be hunky-dory as of January 21st. And you know what, there was no shortage of comments about the things that Trump was saying and people getting angry about what was true, what wasn't true. There were also interesting comments and conversations being picked up around the Democrats. So for example, Kamala is saying these Democrats during Trump's speech need stronger backbones. Saying the second Al Green was kicked out, they should have left in solidarity. Cardboard signs and dry erase boards are cute for pics on social media, but if they actually wanted to show the public how not okay things are, they needed to be harsher than quips they can share on Twitter. Which I'll say, you know, I don't know about them all walking out with Al Green, but I will say Democrat politicians seem like they're just fucking disarray. Like, I think the strategists out there that are like, Dems need to just hold back, let Trump fuck up. We're gonna do some jujitsu bullshit. I think that's incredibly flawed thinking that just allows conservatives to take up more and more of the zone. I think the paddles and signs feel like theater kid bullshit. I think the choose your fighter TikTok thing that's going around right now that included AOC and Crockett, I don't know who came up with that cringe idea. But I will say I am very interested to see how a number of things that we've been seeing play out will continue to play out in, you know, Bernie Sanders going out and just talking to people about the anger that's out there. You know, even seeing Sanders do a response to Donald Trump's address to Congress, even though, you know, Slotkin was the official response. I think that's smart. I think his focus on populism, and I mean, yesterday I said I'd rather be mad than sad. I think he kind of exudes that energy. And even, you know, I know he's gonna get shit, and I might even get shit for saying it. I think what Newsom's trying to do with his podcast is interesting. Like, yeah, he's going to platform and talk to a number of people that you might fucking hate. And they may even be hopping on that podcast to try to dunk on Newsom or, you know, clip farm him. But I absolutely think that there's going to be something to be learned there, even if the ultimate lesson is like, that was a fucked idea. But I think it's better than just laying face down, ass up like many Democrat politicians are right now. Even though I don't always follow this advice or this thinking, even though I always want to, I think it's good to just make a decision, good or
I think that's kind of crazy. Wow. Now, why didn't this pop on videos? Let's see. Wow. So I want to go to YouTube and look at Gavin Newsom. Oops. politicking with Gavin Newsom, Marshawn Lynch, and Doug Hendrickson. The actual podcast itself is not here, which is weird. Let's go look on the actual fucking YouTube. The actual podcast itself is not on YouTube, which is so weird. Like, I don't even know how you would get this then. Gavin Newsom podcast. Yeah, it's not popping it. Aaron Paul with Isa Gonzalez. A film by Flying Lotus starring Isa Gonzalez and Aaron Paul. Get your tickets now. Okay. Yeah, and I don't see this podcast with was it Charlie Kirk? Oh God. Yeah, but where is that? Yeah, but where's the podcast itself, though? It's not actually on YouTube. What's the fucking point of the podcast, then? You have to pay or whatever?
Nothing. If there's a time for Democrat politicians to try things out, especially regarding messaging and outreach or just anything like that, it's probably right now.
A judge just reversed Trump's purge.
Taxes was paying the price. Every
Stop
single...
you. We're past 5 seconds. Reload. What's going on?
Okay, so I guess everyone's not fired, and it turns out the mass firings of government employees is not okay. Yes, it turns out Donald Trump and Elon Musk illegally terminated tens of thousands of government employees through the stroke of a pen and error-riddled mass emails. At least that's the current legal landscape. Seemingly overnight, hundreds of federal employees, including air traffic controllers, park rangers, Social Security customer service representatives, even the watchdogs that enforce federal service laws, had all lost their jobs. But the American Federation of Government Employees quickly struck back by filing a suit against the nation's top HR office, the Office of Personnel Management. And then in a ruling handed down just a few days ago that's sending shockwaves through the nation, Judge Alsup ruled against the Trump administration, writing, quote, "No statute anywhere ever has granted OPM the authority to direct the termination of employees."
Wow, and they just slaughtered him. The Supreme Court came in and they were like, no. That's what we all expected kind of to happen. But I mean, like, it's funny when it does happen. It is kind of funny. It's funny when it happens. He just gets slaughtered. He gets slaughtered.
He's in other agencies. Judge Alsup then
went gets slaughtered by a ruling. Oh my God. I mean, I get
accessible
it. Wait, no, go back. Sorry.
Okay, so I guess everyone's not fired, and it turns out the mass firings of government employees is
That's not
okay.
real.
Yes, it turns out Donald Trump and Elon Musk illegally terminated tens of thousands of government employees through the stroke of a pen and error-riddled mass emails. At least that's the current legal landscape. Seemingly overnight, hundreds of federal employees, including air traffic controllers, park rangers, Social Security customer service representatives, even the watchdogs that enforce federal service laws, had all lost their jobs. But the American Federation of Government Employees quickly struck back by filing a suit against the nation's top HR office, the Office of Personnel Management. And then in a ruling handed down just a few days ago that's sending shockwaves through the nation, Judge Alsup ruled against the Trump administration, writing, quote, "No statute anywhere ever has granted OPM the authority to direct the termination of employees in other agencies." Judge Alsup then went on to cite a laundry list of egregious misconduct by OPM, including directing agencies to fire employees under false pretenses of poor performance, and changing the rules about government firing on a whim. He added that it is, quote, "beyond the cavil that the agency did not follow proper rulemaking procedures." This sets the stage for a showdown between the court and the Trump administration. Will the administration comply with the court's order? It's still unclear. And if we haven't made this point clear enough already, yes, this is a constitutional crisis. Now, the Trump administration and/or Elon Musk were wasting no time in moving forward with their plans to gut the U.S. government. On January 20th, 2025, Trump had just barely finished swearing to uphold the law before directing the Office of Personnel Management to issue a legally dubious command to all agency heads. They must create lists of all federal employees who were still within their probationary period. The Office of Personnel Management, or OPM, demanded that no later than January 24th, 2025, agencies had to send these lists to employment.accountability@opm.gov. Now, it's worth mentioning that probationary employee...
You have some dessert of yogurt. I'll be right back. Pasta was good.
doesn't mean someone who did something wrong and is given a second chance. As we'll discuss in more detail, it generally means someone who had their current position for less than a year, even if they were promoted or took on a new role from within the federal government. But this didn't stop the new administration from treating the probationary designation like a permission slip to enact mass firings. Armed with a list of all federal employees currently in probationary period, on February 13th, OPM officials met with agency leaders across the federal government and instructed them to fire all probationary employees. In the ensuing weeks, tens of thousands of government employees
probationary
were sacked in an unprecedented and chaotic purge of the federal government. And in its communications to agencies, OPM directed the other agencies to send terminated employees template emails claiming that they were being dismissed for poor performance, even though many of these employees had exemplary performance reviews. And despite promising in the fork in the road email that employees who were laid off would be treated with dignity and afforded the protections in place, these firings were anything but dignified, and terminated employees were not offered the promised protections. Some employees were even called to...
I don't understand the Trump administration. It's like he targeted the only people still working and tried to kill them.
Large group Zoom meetings
I don't know how else to say it. These are like the only people left that are actually working. The rest of us all know better. There's no money to be made. There's no like survival to be made. You know? So these are the people still working who have been there for a long time, and those are the people you chose to attack the day one.
To be notified that they would...
They're probably the people voting for you, most likely.
Be fired. And yet others received the insult of being fired by a mail merge fail that referred to them as Dear Employee First Name, Employee Last Name. And the process was so chaotic that the federal government fired employees responsible for overseeing our nuclear arsenal and protecting us against the bird flu, only to quickly rehire them at varying degrees of success. And I guess that's what happens when you order your lackey to use a chainsaw instead of a scalpel. But on February 19th, 2025, several federal employee unions fought back, filing against OPM. They were later joined by membership organizations, including environmental organizations, a veterans' rights organization, and an organization representing small businesses, all of whom had been harmed by the federal firings. And the plaintiffs claimed that OPM didn't have the authority to direct federal firings, that only the individual federal agencies had been granted that authority by Congress. And additionally, plaintiffs argued that OPM violated the Administrative Procedure Act's prohibition on agency actions that are arbitrary and capricious and abuse of discretion, or otherwise not in accordance with the law. And that's because the Civil Service Protection Act and OPM's own regulations specify that probationary employees can only be lawfully terminated for unsatisfactory...
So it's weird. He didn't say he would do this, but when he did, he went at it like he was dead serious about firing all these people. Which seems weird because aren't they essentially the government?
Factory performance or conduct, or if the government...
It was like this weird fantasy masturbatory trip that he had to deliver to somebody who was like, I'm sick of the current state of everything and we want everybody fired. And we'll rehire everybody and use our judgment on each and every person on a case-by-case basis. And Trump was like, okay, well, if you promise me the election, I'll do that. And they're like, okay, we'll get you the election, but you have to fire everybody that we don't like.
Specific set of rules regarding reductions in force or RIFs, which OPM definitely did not do here. Plaintiffs also allege that OPM had violated the Administrative Procedure Act by essentially changing the rules about firings without ever engaging in notice and comment rulemaking. The Administrative Procedure Act, by the way, might be the subject of law school's most boring class, but it's also the backbone of regulatory law. It's the law that requires executive agencies to behave rationally and make fact-based decisions. Under the APA, if an agency wants to create or change a rule, it has to publish a draft rule and take public comment on it. Now, agencies aren't required to change the rules based on public comments, but they do have to at least pretend to take public comment into account. And OPM didn't even bother with that low-bar pretense before changing the rules about firing probationary employees. So under the APA, a court will only overturn an agency action if the court finds that the agency didn't consider the relevant
So not
factors
only are they bad at like their coup d'etat, and they're like backing off now before we kill them, they're also like really bad at the actual governing itself. They're like particularly bad and they get eaten on this all day long by actual leaders.
make a clear error in judgment. And this is generally considered a pretty high bar, so claiming that OPM acted in an arbitrary and capricious way when it fired the probationary employees.
You know, one of the weird things was about the Nazi Party was the fervor that the German had for Hitler. Now, as much as you might want it to be, this country does not worship Trump the way that Germany worshipped Hitler. And that's how they got the Holocaust done. Now, I think most right-wingers want the Holocaust. I've always thought that. I mean, I've always thought that. It's hyperbolic, but it is not fair. But I do think that. And I think they do want that. It's kind of insane. So, like, what do you do? What do you do where there's so many people chomping at the bit for this?
Challenging case for the AFGE to make. And the plaintiffs clearly...
So one of the things I would say that they didn't really slipshod approach, you know, they didn't take a slipshod approach in the public to, or not the public, but well, yeah, the public did not take a slipshod approach to ascertaining what these people want, what these leaders want.
Enjoy to challenge, though, because on February 23rd, they made another very ambitious...
And so they're all the time, they're tracking it. The public tracks it. Not just the public, but like the journalists, everybody tracks it. Everybody tracks everything this fucking madman does. Everything he does. Because they're like, every word matters, and they're right about this.
Claim they filed a motion for a temporary restraining order, or TRO, claiming that OPM's firings needed to be stopped immediately because they were unlawful.
So he promised some masturbatory fucking thing to some right-wing Sith overlord. Probably greater than him, because he obviously had to wheel and deal with this person, and whatever he promised them, it was an American. It's going to be a lobbyist. You know, they made fun of this in that television show, House of Cards. There was a really amazing black lawyer named Remy, if you recall. And Remy was like this terrible, terrible backstabbing lobbyist who was backing the interests of Raymond Tusk, who was like this crazy, I think he was done in the mold of George Soros. Yeah, I think so. It was a mix of like of weird Native American businessmen and George Soros and stuff, and so they depicted this terrible rendition of whoever pulls the puppet strings on the president. And it always turns out to, and they did this very well. And I'm sorry, it's not terrible. It's just the ramifications of it are kind of terrible. What they would say is happening. They're like, yeah, this lobbyist detects who's gonna win and then bets all their money on it and all this, so the rest of Washington watches what the lobbyist does. That's who Remy was supposed to be in House of Cards. And all the time I think about the weird politics of House of Cards all the time, because I think that's how they conduct real politics in the real world. I don't think House of Cards is very much a fiction, really, and it's sort of weird. Like, you can see that these people, they got in and they promised a Night of the Long Knives to some right-wing Sith overlords like Emperor Palpatine. And that's what Trump did to get power. He was like, yeah, I'll come in and I'll fire fucking everybody. Sure, that's what you want? No problem, I'll fire everybody. I'm the guy who fires everybody. They won't be surprised or whatever. I'll be like, you're fired, and they'll laugh at me because I'm that guy from The Apprentice who says, you're fired or whatever. And so so he gives this to them, and they're like, okay, well, you're not going to like what we say. You're probably going to be like, this is, political suicide, but we're going to fucking fire everybody in the government, everybody who does anything. And Trump's like, well, but won't that shut down the government? And they're like, oh yeah, sure, but I mean, do you care about that? And Trump is like, no, I don't. Because why would he? He doesn't lose any money if the government goes down. He himself personally does not lose any money if the government goes down. I think he loses a bit of vote, maybe 2% of the vote or something, but he doesn't, he doesn't like lose he himself does not lose anything if we go to war, or if corruption is solved, or if corruption just reigns. It doesn't matter. A lot of this problem is he doesn't really finance. He doesn't benefit financially from a lot of this. So you can see what steers him when he makes his moves. It's stupid. It's that transactional based shit that they talk about all the time. He wants transactions. Now that's cool if he was a businessman who believed in business, but he's throwing all these tariffs.
And would cause immediate...
He's not a businessman. He taxed everybody he intended to do business with in the next 5 years, like 25%. They're going to hate his guts. They're going to charge him these crazy prices. That's what happens when you piss off businessmen. Maybe you've never done it before, but I have. I've pissed off businessmen in both Rust and WoW. And like, they don't like it when you fucking come in and you take a bunch of money that they weren't planning on or whatever. They don't like it when you come in and you just demand a bunch of money and they just pay you because you have something that they can't get. I used to do it with leather quite a bit on World of Warcraft. And I do it on Eve with like, they can't get Master at Arms that fucking easy. It's like 110 million. That's still a bitter bill. That's still a bitter pill for most of the Eve Online community to swallow, is how expensive Master at Arms are. So I go in and I sell the Master at Arms. Well, I don't sell the Master at Arms, but I make Master at Arms boosters available to them at 100 million, which is about a 9 million cut down, and they can raffle ticket on them, and they do. I've sold like fucking 600 of these or something. I believe I have. I've sold like 600 of these at like 100 million a pop. And so I have all this incidental income just fucking sitting here, just waiting. Because it doesn't really matter. Like, I don't bone my business partners like Trump, so they constantly buy from me. They like my product, and I provide them something that they can't get in other places, which is a cheap swing and Master at Arms Cerebral Accelerator. So the last people that I want to bone with some fucking tariff are the people fucking buying my Master at Arms, And for America, that's a car. The last thing that they want is the car industry to be fucked with. They think that's the living, breathing heart of America, and it is, as long as we can create more cars than there is people. It is the living, breathing heart of America. But you know, it came up tonight like twice where they mentioned like, no, this won't affect, mainly the tariffs won't affect American car makers. And you can tell what they really care about. They want that Carmageddon going. They want that car machine they've got going, producing more cars than nobody uses. It's really fucking weird. There's so many cars on this fucking planet, and we're desperate. We pay taxis and rental fees and all kinds of shit to get our hands on cars so we can travel and stuff like this. But I mean, when it comes to the actual car market, nobody's buying. I mean, people are buying. People buy cars, but they buy cars when they have to. They don't buy cars when they want to most of the time. There's still a few, there's still a few markets where they do buy cars, like sports cars and stuff that they want to. But like overall, nobody buys a car anymore that they don't need. It's this terrible market. They keep saying, oh, we got to protect the American car maker. I'm not saying don't protect the American car maker. I'm sympathetic to the American car maker. I'm saying protect them. Yeah, do. But I mean, like, building your entire fucking, like, tariff, like trade war off of empowering just that particular constituency isn't, the kind of leadership that leads to a good prime minister or a good president's reputation. Because you kind of bone everybody with that. You kind of do. It's sort of insane, and I'm watching you do it left and right. So now a judge just completely reverses your purge, and it's like everybody is back at their job again, chill.
Irreparable harm to the plaintiffs. OPM replied,
and can we say that we're surprised? No, we're not surprised that some, like Supreme Court judge came up all up in arms, being like, no, you can't do this.
It had never
Am I surprised? No, I'm not surprised at all. Not at all. It's weird. It's weird that I'm not, I'm just not surprised. I'm not surprised this stuff happens.
Told the agencies to conduct the mass firings. It was just a suggestion.
It would be a shame if that... Oh, sorry, Colonel.
A friendly request, a polite reminder of the administration's stated commitment to eviscerating the federal workforce. Do with that information what you will, politically appointed agency heads, or suffer the consequences.
You're fired.
You're fired.
Now, at the same time,
that guy's freaked out.
And claimed it had never.
He's like, I got fired on The Apprentice. Nobody's gonna ever hire me again.
Any agency to fire its employees. It also argued that it has the authority to issue such a command if it wishes to. The agency also claimed that a loss of employment or benefits didn't constitute irreparable harm, and neither does a loss of government services or a loss of constitutional rights. Now, regardless, OPM argued that the plaintiffs lacked standing because their injuries were too speculative, and further argued that the court lacked jurisdiction in the first place because federal employment claims have to go through a separate administrative process like the Merit Systems Protection Board. Thus, the court was left to consider the validity of those arguments and whether the plaintiffs could justify their request for a temporary restraining order, a high bar from a legal standpoint, which would keep OPM from directing the termination of employees. Now, the AFGE case concerns the firing of probationary employees. And it's important to understand that in the government employment context, probationary doesn't mean bad or underperforming.
No.
It's a legal term that's used to describe a federal government employee who is still under valuation before being granted broader civil service protections. Now, almost every government employee is probationary when they first join the government. Some probationary employees, though, are not actually new to government employment. Some have served many years in government, but have been placed back in the probationary category because they switched to a new role or returned to the government after a break in service, or even because they've been promoted. Some government employees are probationary for a year, others are probationary for 2 years. This system is designed to allow the government employer to evaluate a new employee's performance before hiring them in a permanent capacity. And ironically, sometimes the probationary employees have the most up-to-date skill set, or are the highest qualified, or are simply the best. And they might even be replacing poorly performing employees. But even though an employee is probationary, they still have some protections. They can typically only be dismissed for poor performance or when an agency does an organized reduction in force. That's probably why OPM directed agencies to use form letters that falsely claim that the fired employees had performed poorly, because OPM knows that probationary employees cannot just be summarily fired. So OPM, through its form letter, simply asserted that the fired employees were poor performers, despite plenty of evidence to the contrary. Now, the AFGE lawsuit was filed against OPM specifically because OPM was the agency that directed all the other agencies to conduct the mass firings. And if you haven't heard of OPM before, you can't be blamed because up until recently, the only newsworthy thing that OPM had ever done was allow 20 million people's data to be breached in 2015. Now, if your personal data has been hacked, even if it was a hack because of the actual government itself, you'll want a good lawyer. But if you want a great lawyer,
because of the actual government itself.
If you have suffered a data breach, you know, especially if you got one of those letters saying that your data might have been leaked, if you got in a car crash, or dealing with workers' comp or social security issues, I mean, who's not dealing with those at this point? We can represent you or help find you the right attorney. It's so important to talk to a lawyer right away so you can maximize your recovery. And we don't get paid unless you do, so there's nothing up front. So just click on the link in the description or call the phone number on screen for a free consultation with my team. Because you don't just need the legal team, you need the Eagle team. Now, aside from the data breach, it's been an agency that largely functions in the background, managing the boring human resources aspects of the federal government, including setting human resources policy and managing federal health, life insurance, and some other federal retirement benefits. But since the inauguration, OPM has become a regular feature in the nation's headlines. First, under Doge's direction, the agency set up a questionably legal server designed to circumvent the leadership of every other executive agency by emailing all 2.4 million government employees at the same time. This server has already been the subject of a lawsuit alleging that it had violated federal privacy laws, which we talk about in a different video. OPM used the server to send the infamous Fork in the Road email offering federal workers the legally dubious deferred resignation program and several subsequent clarifications about the program. And more recently, as noted in the AFGE lawsuit, that same server was used to send out an email to all federal employees giving them some Saturday afternoon homework, a demand that they provide Elon and his minions with a list of 5 accomplishments from the prior week.
Real quick question here. How much time would you say you spend each week dealing with these TPS reports?
Yeah. This email and Elon's accompanying social media post threatening to fire any employees who didn't respond set off a weekend of confusion at the taxpayers' expense across the federal government.
Oh, good.
With some agency heads instructing employees to disregard the email, others telling them to respond, and some giving conflicting instructions. And as plaintiffs noted in their lawsuit, there is no rule, policy, or regulation that grants OPM the authority to make this kind of demand. So for a small, previously unremarkable agency, OPM has been very busy. And according to plaintiffs, one of the things OPM has been very busy doing is violating the very same statute that created the agency, the Civil Service Reform Act of 1978.
Oh my God.
Now, the Civil Service Reform Act was designed to ensure that government hiring was based on merit as opposed to favoritism or cronyism. Some people think that's a really good idea, and some people, mainly in the current administration, think that's a really bad idea. But the idea of a merit-based federal hiring system may seem pretty elementary, but that's actually not the way that federal hiring worked for the first 100 or so years of the United States history. Now, prior to the Pendleton Civil Service Reform Act of 1883, federal employment was reliant on a patronage system. Under the patronage system, federal jobs were given to people who provided political or financial support to the winning candidate's election. This created a government staffed by, as Mark Twain put it, ignoramuses. Rewarding political supporters and unqualified cronies with positions in government. That sounds familiar, but I can't place it. But in 1881, President Garfield was assassinated by one of his supporters who had been turned down for federal employment he felt entitled to as a supporter of the president. In response to the assassination, Congress passed the Pendleton Civil Service Reform Act of 1881, which required that some federal positions be filled not by the patronage system, but by...
I didn't know about this. How a presidential assassination led to the end of the spoils system. Before civil service reforms introduced after President Garfield's assassination, federal employees could be fired for not making campaign donations.
Patronage system, federal jobs were given to people who provided political or financial support to the winning candidate's election. This created a government staffed by, as Mark Twain put it, ignoramuses.
Ignoramuses.
Rewarding political supporters and unqualified cronies with positions in government. That sounds familiar, but I can't place it. But in 1881, President Garfield was assassinated by one of his supporters who had been turned down for federal employment he felt entitled to as a supporter of the president. In response to the assassination, Congress passed the Pendleton Civil Service Reform Act of 1881, which required that some federal positions be filled not by the patronage system, but by a merit-based civil service exam. Now, at first, only 10% of federal government positions were filled by a civil service exam, but that percentage grew steadily over the years as the executive branch, Congress, and the American public all came to realize that having merit-based government hiring was beneficial for the functioning of government. But by 1978, many people believed that the government's merit system had broken down. In response, Congress passed the Civil Service Reform Act of 1978, which laid out merit principles to guide government hiring. And under the act, hiring, pay, and promotions were meant to be based on merit and should be free of discrimination based on political alignment or immutable characteristics like race and gender. The act also protects employees from bad personnel management practices, including
49
arbitrary
active.
actions, personal favoritism, or coercion for partisan political purposes. It also prohibited federal employees from using their official authority to affect the results of elections. And it created whistleblower protections for employees who lawfully report legal violations, waste, abuse of authority, or dangers to public safety. But most important of all for AFGE's case is that the Civil Service Reform Act of 1978 and its associated regulations also set up processes and requirements for removing employees from federal service. Non-probationary employees must be given notice of their performance problems and an opportunity to remedy those problems. Probationary employees should only be terminated for poor performance, and reductions in force should be conducted in an orderly, methodical way. And in their filings, plaintiffs argue that OPM violated the Civil Service Reform Act and its regulations by summarily dismissing probationary employees, falsely claiming that they had poor performance, and engaging in a de facto reduction in force without following the required procedures. In response, defendant OPM claimed that even if plaintiff was right on the merits, the court actually has no jurisdiction over the firing of probationary employees because the fired employees must instead take their claims to the Merit Systems Protection Board, which is an independent quasi-judicial agency in the executive branch that serves as the guardian of federal merit systems. Now, the Merit Systems Protection Board is composed of 2 members and the chair of the board, in this case, Kathy A. Harris. The function is to adjudicate individual employees' appeals of adverse employment actions and conduct merit system studies. And ironically, OPM's argument that the firing of probationary employees could only be adjudicated by the MSPB is basically disingenuous, though, because probationary employees typically can't appeal adverse employment actions to the MSPB. The board's protections are usually only available to employees who have successfully completed their probationary period. But probationary employees aren't entirely without recourse. They can still file complaints with another independent agency, the Office of Special Counsel, or OSC, if they believe they have been subjected to prohibited personnel practices, including discrimination, political coercion, or nepotism. And after being fired last month, 6 probationary employees did just that, asking the OSC to investigate their firings. And the head of the OSC, Hampton Dellinger, who Trump tried to fire and whose case is now on appeal to the Supreme Court, found that the government had violated the law in several ways when it terminated the probationary employees. First, the government had attempted to circumvent the statutory and regulatory requirements for reductions in force. Since reductions in force require specific procedures, including prioritizing retention of high-performing employees and veterans, and the government did not do that here, as evidenced by the fact that several of the fired probationary employees had positive performance records or were veterans. And the OSC also concluded that the government violated the regulations governing the dismissal of probationary employees. Specifically, the government had not actually performed individualized assessments of the performance of the employees before firing them. And because of this, the OSC requested that the MSPB board stay the employees' termination, allowing them to continue in their jobs while the OSC further investigates the complaints. The board
Look, I've even got like some Adams.
But as I mentioned, the "you're fired" guy has now illegally attempted to fire the people.
I've got some Adams
from
this.
being illegally fired. So on February 7th, the White House sent an email to the head of the Office of Special Counsel, Dellinger, unceremoniously firing him with no explanation or reasoning.
You're fired.
But as the head of the Office of Special Counsel, which is an independent agency set up by Congress, basically like the Fed, Mr. Dellinger can only be fired for inefficiency, neglect of duty, or malfeasance in office. So he probably filed a lawsuit and asked for a temporary restraining order to prevent him from being removed from his job. And a DC district court initially granted the TRO and later ruled in Mr. Dellinger's favor on the merits, finding that he was wrongly terminated and ordering that he be permitted to stay on as the head of OSC. Then the White House played the same card again on February 10th, attempting to fire Kathy A. Harris, the chair of the Merit Systems Protection Board, who again could only be fired for inefficiency, neglect of duty, or malfeasance in office. Ms. Harris also challenged the firing, and a DC district court sided with her and granted the TRO, preventing her from being removed from her job until her lawsuit was resolved. And adding to the chaos, another board member, Raymond Lyman, announced his intention to nope out of this mess and retire when his term ran out on March 1st, 2025. So if Kathy Harris loses her lawsuit and is removed from the board will no longer have a quorum and will be unable to adjudicate any cases. And this previously occurred from January 2017 to March 2022 and resulted in a backlog of several thousand cases that profoundly affected the lives of all employees involved. If the current firings continue at pace and the board lacks the necessary quorum, tens of thousands of cases may pile up, and all the while the employees will be left without paychecks, benefits, and careers. So it's a neat trick for this administration to claim in court that wrongly terminated employees must seek redress from the MSPB, then at the same time try to disable the MSPB by firing its board members. And they may eventually get this Uno reverse card to work, but for now, the courts adjudicating the AFGE case aren't having it. So back to this lawsuit, AFGE versus OPM, the immediacy of the plaintiff's harms, the loss of pay and benefits, is the reason why the fired employees sought a stay from the Office of Special Counsel and why they asked for a temporary restraining order. Now, as we've talked about a lot recently, getting a court to grant a TRO is quite a challenge. In order to justify a TRO, a plaintiff has to meet 4 requirements. 1, they are likely to succeed on the merits. 2, that they are likely to suffer irreparable harm in the absence of preliminary relief. 3, the balance of equities tips in their favor. And 4, that the injunction is in the public interest. And a TRO is just meant to be a stopgap measure that will protect the plaintiff until the court can hold a hearing for a preliminary injunction, which would then be an injunction that generally lasts throughout the entire lawsuit. And many courts won't order them at all because they are issued without any hearing. So it says something that the AFGE plaintiffs, Hampton Dellinger and Ms. Harris, have all managed to get TROs to stop the administration's illegal firing. And here in the AFGE case, the court ultimately found OPM's arguments unconvincing and granted the plaintiff's request for a temporary restraining order, stating that the plaintiffs were likely to prevail on the merits because Congress, not OPM, controls employment and spending, and Congress has determined that each agency is responsible for managing its own employment. The court opined that, quote, no statute anywhere ever has been applied to direct determination of employees and other agencies, and found the plaintiffs had, quote, mustered a mountain of evidence indicating that OPM had directed the agencies to the court also agreed that OPM had likely violated the Administrative Procedure Act because its direction to the other agencies was not supported by any statutory authority and was arbitrary and capricious because it directed agencies to send form letters claiming that the employees were being terminated for poor performance when OPM could not possibly have evaluated their performance. OPM had also violated the APA by not conducting any notice or comment rulemaking before contradicting its own rules by suddenly firing the probationary employees. Now, the court did concede to OPM, however, that it was unlikely that it had jurisdiction over the union plaintiffs' claims because those needed to be channeled through the Merit System Protection Board or another administrative process. The court also asserted that it does have jurisdiction over the other organizations' claims. It went on to conclude that those organizations had standing because they had demonstrated an injury caused by OPM's action. The court also agreed with plaintiffs that OPM's actions would cause irreparable harm. Damage to national parks, loss of access to essential government services like the Veterans Crisis Line, and loss of access to loan guarantees and other essential small business administration services all constituted irreparable harm. And the court opined that the public interest weighed in favor of granting the TRO, satisfying the 3rd and 4th factors of the strict TRO requirements. So in conclusion, the court ordered that OPM's memo and all other OPM efforts to direct the termination of employees of these 6 agencies named in the filings were unlawful, invalid, and must be stopped and rescinded, and that OPM shall provide written notice of this order to those agencies. But since everything is chaos, it's unclear what this means for any agency other than the 6 agencies named in the order. It's unclear if it means that these wrongly fired employees will be reinstated, or even if they are reinstated, how long they will last before the administration finds some other more legally permissible way to say that they're fired. But as of the recording of this video, one of the agencies named in the suit, the NSF, has hired back all the fired probationary employees and gave them back pay. And at the same time, other
Gave them
agencies,
back
meanwhile,
pay. So
continue
they
to
just
terminate
got, okay.
probationary employees. But OPM has been forced to quietly
So you
revise
understand what happened. So am I to understand?
some guidance to acknowledge actually.
So all the people that got fired, they all just got back paid for work that they didn't do. Because they were fired for a few minutes, a few days.
Quote, agencies have ultimate decision-making authority over and responsibility for such personnel actions. So as we've been saying a lot recently, hopefully they'll follow the court order. But interestingly, on March 4th, Special Counsel Dellinger requested that the Merit Systems Protection Board reinstate more than 5,000 fired probationary workers at the United States Department of Agriculture, but whether or not other agencies will follow remains an open question. That's probably not going to fly either because the DC Circuit Court of Appeals just vacated the TRO that kept Dellinger in place, so he's now fired. But it's particularly interesting to see how the media is covering all of this. When Judge Alsop granted the plaintiff's TRO, over 200 news sources reported on it, with half of the sources coming from the political center, a little over 30% coming from the left, and less than 20% coming from the right. And when you examine the headlines, you see some very different frames emerge that shape how readers interpret and understand the events that are unfolding. On the right, a common theme is to use the phrase federal judge in California and Democrat-appointed judge, suggesting the rulings are politically motivated. Sources on the left were most likely to claim that the court found that the Trump administration's actions to be outright illegal, But interestingly enough, sources from the center typically use phrases like likely illegal, implying deeper uncertainties that are not yet resolved. Now, the headlines you read first have immense power to shape how you understand the news. And that's why I like to see the news from as many angles as possible, which I can with the help of today's sponsor, Ground News. Ground News is a website and app developed by a former NASA engineer on a mission to give readers an easy, data-driven, and objective way to read the news. And right now they're offering Legal Eaglets 40% off their unlimited access Vantage subscription. You can scan the QR code or use the link in the description to get a discount for a limited time. But Ground News gathers related articles from around the world and across the political spectrum, so you can see the bias and compare coverage. Every story comes with a quick visual breakdown of the political bias, factuality, and ownership of the sources reporting, all backed by ratings from 3 independent news monitoring organizations. One of my favorite parts is their bias comparison feature, which highlights specific differences in reporting across the political spectrum. This can be especially helpful when reading stories from sources you've never heard of, where there's no telling who owns it or what agenda they might have. I also love their blind spot feature, which shows you stories that are underreported by either side of the political spectrum. Like the story of Doge officially cutting their estimated savings in half, which we've talked about on this channel. This story was a blind spot for right-leaning news media, which represented only about 10% of the sources who covered it. It's analysis like this that helps explain why we often talk past each other and why some people seem hyper-focused on what seems like complete nonsense or fake news. But like I said, Ground News is my favorite way to get the news. And as a Legal Eaglet, you can save 40% off their Ground News Vantage subscription by scanning the code that's on screen or clicking on the link down below. This subscription gives you unlimited access to every feature, including the Bias Insight tool and blind spot feed. And by subscribing, you'll support an independent news platform working to make the media landscape more transparent. So click on the link below or scan the code today. And after that, click on the link over here for more Legal Eagle, or I'll see you in court.
Welcome back to the Papa Me channel. How you doing? How you doing? Come on and settle down because today we're talking about
Thank you, Papa Me, for the extra
social
content
media
for the
has
stream.
made
Thank you,
it
Legal
very
Eagle.
accessible to kind of get
The extra content for the
Okay, so
stream
I
up
guess
like a
everyone's
subject
not
channel.
fired, and it turns...
Everyone's not fired, and they all got...
Back to the Papa Me
And
channel.
Trump just paid for them to have paid off leave.
How you doing? How you doing? Come on and settle down because today we're talking about prison. Social media has made it very accessible to kind of get the ins and outs of what happens in a prison. Maybe you see a prisoner, maybe he makes a love doll out of pillows and he squeezes its ass and its titties and, you know, you're like, that's romantic. Or maybe you watch people smoking weed or maybe stabbing someone to death. Prison has never been more accessible to the common man. With prisoners getting cell phones and all kinds of different weird things happening, it just made me want to make a video talking about all the weird things that happen in everyday prison life. And it seems that every person who has been to prison has an interesting story or some kind of perspective that we from the outsiders, us safe, law-abiding citizens, find scary or fascinating. You seen that guy that talks about, like, it's like a prisoner who has a social media channel. It's just about how he got addicted to, like, having sex with men, like getting obsessed with, like, men's asses.
I'm talking about this motherfucker's ass was so fat. It was like your baby mama. That motherfucker's ass was fat. Ungodly fat, right?
What?
So let's take a look at some of these absolutely wild stories and see what life's like inside the clink. Is that the right word? Verbiage?
The Booty Warrior.
Brink? The clink.
I've never heard of clink.
I'm almost
Yeah, Clink, yeah.
positive clink is a...
Yeah, Clink is a term for jail, yeah.
Clink. I'm slang a generic term for prisoner in jail.
Clink.
Okay, the clink. Just making sure. You know, when people think of prison, what do they think? They don't say butts and pedophiles and murderers. And if you're thinking of a movie, what do you think? You're probably thinking of sneaking in contraband. Right. Some of the best stories come from people trying to smuggle things into prison. Prisoners have to constantly find more creative ways to bring things in, whether it be cell phones or drugs, all that kind of stuff. And they have to get creative. You know, back in the day, it was just your butt. I feel like the butt's a dead meme.
That's the first place they look.
What's the whole thing? They have you like squat and cough.
Really?
Oh yeah, that's you get naked and they're like squat and cough. So you squat, you do. You're supposed to immediately just shit out everything.
Yup.
There's no way you're pushing like a box of ibuprofen up that deep. You know what I mean? Our first little subject today, which is an attorney smuggling K2 soaked court documents. First off, just want to say, great prison pic. He looks lovable, but he also looks like he could just kill me with his bare hands. In the gay community, he'd be called a bear. Just kind of cool. In 2025, this year, this happened this year, 2025. 37-year-old Nathan Williams got the help of his other inmates to come up with a unique way to smuggle in drugs to Duval County Jail. Oh, God. You see that Jacksonville Jaguar thing? Duval. He took an assortment of
Wait, no, I didn't. Wait, did I see that? What?
year-old Nathan Williams got the help of his other inmates to come up with a unique way to smuggle in drugs to Duval County Jail. Oh, God. You see that Jacksonville Jaguar thing? Duval.
Jacksonville Jaguar thing. Oh my God.
Up at their tiny po. Up at.
What are you looking for? Looking for.
I don't really understand.
Up at their tiny.
Duval. Maybe I can't do this. Never mind. I'm just gonna get off it.
Duval. He took an assortment of their legal paperwork and had them soaked in K2, a synthetic form of marijuana that is illegal.
It's illegal.
I guess it is illegal. Okay, well, I think it's a synthetic form of marijuana. It's like rat poison. If it was marijuana, it'd be like, I don't give a. But they're like, no, this is bleach and Tide Pods. That's gonna get you hot. I smoked it once. I know I've told you this story, but I was playing World of Warcraft with my buddy like way back in the day, hitting some shit off of like a Monster energy can pipe. We were just gaming, and all of a sudden I was like, I had this horrible panic attack. And I'm like, I'm gonna die. It's like I thought that I was having a heart attack. I'm like, dude, I'm having a panic attack. So now I can't smoke weed. I haven't smoked weed since I was 16 years old.
Try it again. It's been 32 years.
I don't want to. I'm sticking to healthy stuff like Jack Daniels and whiskey and rum, dude. That's why I have this. That's why I have this body. He was successfully transporting the drugs for financial gain for a while, but an increase in drug overdoses led to an investigation that resulted in him being caught and arrested. He now faces 8 third-degree felonies. So started off light. They have this year a little K2, soaked in rat poison, shove it up your bum, and now people are ODing on doo-doo pills. I don't know how I'd feel about that. I'm trying to get high. It's like, this is up my ass. I guess if you're in the clink, it doesn't matter.
You throw a condom around it.
I like to think that it was just like bare fist, just like covered in the K2 oil. He just like, because he wants to get high too. He's like, oh. Well, I guess if it wasn't covered, it would just dissolve in his body, and he would probably just OD himself.
Or he did the saw method, dipped it in wax and swallowed it.
Yeah. Well, I want to get more eccentric with it, so that's why I'm going to switch to pigeons smuggling in phones. Did Dr. Doolittle get arrested? What the how did that happen? In 2017, a pigeon was found trying to enter a Brazilian prison with a cell phone attached to it. Guards noticed that an inmate was frantically trying to capture the moving bird, so they intervened and lured it down with pieces of food. Dig in their asshole and grab out some, like a cupcake or something. Hi. Further investigation revealed that it was wearing some sort of vest designed to help it carry contraband over prison walls. Pigeons had supposedly been bred and raised by inmates with the purpose of having them smuggled out and given contraband, so that they could be released and use their instincts to return home.
Bred them in the prison.
He's like, no, give him time. They must make love. Only if they make love is his home. That's a pretty devious way of bringing in some stuff, though, huh? Training pigeons.
How'd they get the first pigeons?
Probably sweet treats or something. Probably plantains or some shit like that. Or we could talk about an updated pigeon, a drone, delivering drugs to inmates. Well, that makes more sense. You can be pretty far from a drone to control it.
Some of them, yeah. Or you get like a little extender.
Yeah, a giant metal rod. In 2016, it was discovered that drones are being utilized to smuggle copious amounts of contraband. Drones, cell phones, and films.
Where they watch these films.
It's also just like, doesn't the cell phone just do that for you? Like, oh, I need magazines, DVDs. It's like, so you have to bring a portable DVD player too. Yeah.
Just bring a phone, yeah. Like if you have a phone with internet on it, then like so what?
An inmate named Thaddeus Shorts, that's a great name for a prisoner. When an inmate named Thaddeus Shorts had been released from prison, he came up with a scheme to officially...
yes, Tad. Every Tad I've ever met was a terrible person.
Deliver products to those inside. He would make up to $6,000 per drop-off. Not bad.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
You're not doing daily deliveries, though. There's no way that the guards are like, what is that thing? Drones are so loud. Can you imagine? He's like, multi-drop today. I'm making $700,000 a month. The operation was shut down after Shorts was caught near the facility with a brand new truck he had purchased from his earnings. The vehicle was filled with drugs, DVDs, and other packages alongside a drone. I like the idea that he immediately got out and he's just like, I'm going to buy a $150,000 Ford Raptor. Dropping off Twinkies and to inmates inside, dude. Apparently, he was so proud of the scheme he orchestrated that he told the investigators everything they wanted to know. He told them he was using the money to create a new, customized drone that could carry larger quantities of supplies. He definitely saw Catch Me If You Can. They're going to be so impressed with this evil scheme that I'm doing that the government's going to hire me. Shorts was convicted yet again, prompting prison management to become more aware of how new tech could be utilized to smuggle stuff into prisoners.
Look at that drone.
The picture of this drone is obnoxious. I think DJI drones have 4 propellers. This has, I think it's 8 propellers. If you've never been around a drone, it is not a quiet affair. I don't know how the guards didn't realize this was happening. Also, like, look at all these windows. Is everyone just like...
All you have to do is a fence. Up and over the fence, you're done. Nope. You just come on over there to the fucking side of the prison wall. Fly it up and over. You're like, all right, homies, meet me at 9. My drone will come at 9 a.m. in the morning and it'll land right at you. It's going to drop like a bunch of stuff. You're going to pick it up and you're going to stuff it down your pants, right? And then all you have to do is send the drone up over about 20 feet. It's like 20 feet or something. Yeah, why not? I mean, it would be hard to get to the... Yeah, you'd have to park further away, I guess. The only hard part would be sending the drone from where you parked. But no, in terms of, like, execution, it's actually really good. Drones defeat prison wall doors. Or I'm sorry, yeah, prison walls. Drones defeat prison walls. I'd never actually thought about that before. So if I was to build an illegal business, I would be like, I can get you anything from the outside up and over the walls with a drone. That's what I do. I deliver jail people stuff with a drone. Do they need drugs? Okay, if you got drugs, then connect it to this drone. Or whatever. I don't have any drugs. You connect drugs to the drone and you pay me 10% or whatever. And yeah, and if you do like, you know, if you do $20,000 worth of business, you got to pay me like, you know, you got to pay me like $2,000.
Make amazing energy drinks and non-caffeinated drinks for you to enjoy throughout your day. They're gluten-free, keto-friendly, and goddamn it, they're good. And we have an amazing flavor, raw meat, right now that you can try and enjoy. It's basically summer in a cup. It's unbelievable. They also just released their V-Card game. So if you like card games, I would check that out as well. And use promo code PAPAMeat and you get 10% off whatever you order from GamerSupps. It's amazing drinks, amazing quality. These guys fucking rule. They're one of the most supportive brands that we ever have on this channel. So please go check them out. Check out the drinks, the shakers, and also check out their new card game because it's a lot of fun. Thank you, GamerSupps, for sponsoring the video, and back to the video.
Gotta go back to the attorneys, though, dude. Those are the real evil motherfuckers out there in the world. An attorney smuggles fentanyl-laced weed to a dominatrix in prison. It's like if you're an attorney, they're just like, no matter what, there has to be some kind of marijuana in my ass. You have to pay me, and you also have to give me a chapstick tube.
In 2023, a Russian dominatrix named Victoria Nostrova began convincing her attorney Christopher Hoyt to smuggle in bags of fentanyl-laced marijuana into the prison for her. She was definitely like silver tonguing that motherfucker.
Do you want me to whip you? He's like, yes. Yeah, could I whip you? He's like, if you want. He's like, I'm afraid. Do not be afraid of things you do not understand, Mr. Attorney.
He would do this regularly before being caught with a loose bag of drugs in her shoes, leading to the lawyer being arrested.
A loose bag of drugs in her shoes.
Thank God we put the replace thing. Being arrested. Well, was he still in the case? As it turns out, the reason for Victoria's imprisonment is absolutely banana nut crazy. In 2014, she was caught on a traffic camera propping up her recently murdered neighbor in the passenger seat of her car. And according to the victim's daughter, quote,
all that was left basically was his skull and bones, no legs, no left hand. I couldn't believe it. She's like, I don't prefer people have left hand.
Her goal was to steal money and valuables from the neighbor, but instead became an international fugitive running from the law to escape Russian prison. And by 2016, she started working as a dominatrix while regularly visiting a salon in Queens. It was there that she met Olga Tisk, a stylist that bore a striking resemblance to Victoria. She decided this was her ticket to freedom. Victoria wanted to have Olga killed so that she could take her identity and live out her new life in Queens. God, Victoria's kind of a baddie though, huh?
I'm not a killer. I'm woman. Only woman.
Also, they don't look that similar. I think the only similarity is they kind of have a cold Russian stick.
Some people just don't have morals.
Like they're just like, how are you doing? Victoria
It's a really
begged
deep,
Olga for an eyebrow touch.
very deep, but also very, very well-known fact of life. Some people just don't have morals. Don't expect them to. Not everybody is like you. Some people just don't have morals. I already got one signal and they're setting off another.
Job that she could perform at her home. There, she brought out a cheesecake as a thank you gift. Olga ate a slice of the cheesecake and found herself vomiting 20 minutes later before passing out. The cheesecake had been laced with phenazepam, intense tranquilizer that could lead to death if dosed high enough.
I walked over to the waste paper basket, and right there was this plastic container with what appeared to be the remnants of pastry, something that looked good.
Olga was alive, but spent the entire night feeling sick. To finish the job, Victoria visited her to deliver some chicken soup, again laced with more of the drug, which sent Olga into a coma. And she's just like, oh, you're sick from cheesecake I gave you? She's like, yes, her stomach bad. And she's like, don't worry, brought you green chicken noodle soup. You have to drink quick though, drink what hot, drink it. Oh, Olga. Oreo, your food is no sit right with Olga. Victoria then ransacked her place for valuable jewelry, a passport, and an employment authorization card before leaving. When she woke up, there were pills surrounding her in what seemed to be a staged Urukai. In 2018, the New York Police Department finally found Victoria with her boyfriend buying a 50-inch TV, where she was eventually in prison for murder, as well as a slew of other crimes that emerged after her arrest. We just want to talk about Victoria. It's an interesting story. I like how they catch her outside of a Best Buy. She's like, I wanted to buy OLED TV. The picture better for me, Olga. They're like, you're Victoria. Are you sure? But, I mean, yeah, we could talk about smuggling stuff all day, but I want to get to the juicy shit. Prisoners of TikTok. Huh? Prison TikTokers, dude. That's where the money's at. Speaking of smuggling, the birds of social media sites like TikTok has given inmates a new hobby to indulge in with the cell phones they smuggle into the cells. That's right. Prisoners have started posting TikToks, giving us a glimpse into life on the inside.
Look how nasty this cell is, man. They just put me in here. I asked for cleaning supply. They told me no. Look, the light don't even work. I ain't got
Wow.
no light. It's the light.
Well, you guys, whenever everyone.
Wow, and they're like, look at this. They're like, look how bad this is.
Urukai. In 2018, the New York Police Department finally found Victoria with her boyfriend buying a 50-inch TV, where she inmates a new hobby to indulge in with the cell phones they smuggle into the cells. That's right. Prisoners have started posting TikToks, giving us a glimpse into life on the inside.
Look how nasty this cell is, man. They just put me in here. I asked for cleaning supply. They told me no. Look, the light don't even work.
Prison / World Star. Prison / World Star.
It's the light.
So all you guys, when everyone was complaining about, oh, TikTok's gonna go away. Ooh, this is unconstitutional. Look at some of these TikToks, dude.
2025, we got niggas sleeping in a mat out this bitch. Hey, bro. Are you alright now? Yeah. Alright.
If we get rid
Are you high in there?
TikTok, then we don't know what the prisoners are doing on the inside. Inmates would post videos of themselves creating do-it-yourself projects, messing around with other inmates, and most of
3 phone charging station.
Inmates would.
Alright.
If we get rid of TikTok, then we don't know what the prisoners are doing on the inside. Inmates would post videos of themselves creating do-it-yourself projects.
Yeah, you can wire from a lamp. I used to do it. There's this wonderful attachment that people don't know about that they should. If you want to live somewhere, which I've done, if you want to live somewhere incognito, there's a wonderful tool for this that people just don't know about, but I do. It's the light bulb socket. Oh, I'm sorry. It's a light bulb power. Yeah, a light bulb power outlet. See it? There it is. This is the tool that you can pretty much take any light socket and turn it into a full-blown power source, including probably the prison. I mean, now you would probably have to go deeper in the prison. You probably have to wire power from the lighting, and it would be very hard. But you probably could get the power from the lighting. You could probably do it if you knew what you were doing. But yeah, this little tool, I use this to live in a fucking an apartment storage closet for like 15 months when I was like younger, when I was like 24, because I was homeless on the streets. And like, and so I used one of these little screw things, little light bulb things to steal power. And then I got an old crappy television, and I borrowed an Xbox from my best friend, like an old Xbox One, like his oldest console or whatever, with Morrowind on it. And I just played Morrowind most of the time. I lived in there for 15 months with a fucking light bulb socket screw thing. And it's got a converted little thing right there. See it? It's like a little converted thing right there. And it works. And it turns any light bulb socket into a full-blown... Like I connected a fucking... like an extension cord to a power surge. Or, not power surge, but... Oh, shit. Ouchies. A surge protector. I plugged in I ran a power cord to a surge protector, and then I had power in there. And with power, during the winter, I had a heater. I had a television running all the time. Occasionally, I would get caught because I would cough. I would catch a flu or a cold or something. I was younger. So I would catch a flu or a cold, and I would cough, and I would get caught by my friends or people that lived there. But the landlord never found out about that. He never did find out. He rented to me for 7 years after that, actually. He never did find out about that. He continued to rent to me as, he rented me a place, half of a place for a long time. And, yeah, it was, it was an interesting time, but I don't know, living in that place, like, I learned that one little light bulb socket trick is actually so fucking good. Is some of the most throughput you can actually understand about society. Is if there's a light bulb socket, you can get a fucking surge protector. Most people don't know this, but yeah, and also for your own house, this even works. If you've got a light bulb socket, but you don't have like any other fucking wall sockets in the room, that light bulb socket can turn into a surge protector fairly simply with some tape and a cord and stuff. It's dumb, but I mean, like, and it won't look good, but it is like an option. And this is something for stealth camping or like squatting, like okay, like when I see a light bulb socket, I'm like, oh my god, I'm gonna live here for months, and I have before too. I've like oh my god, I found a light socket that was still running for some reason. I was living in a burnt out power. I was living in a burnt out restaurant. But the power was on for some fucking reason. The power was just on. It was just on. They left that power on for like 5 years in this burnt out restaurant. I don't know why it was on. They just never shut it off. And I capitalized off that. I was like, well, I know the power in the... Like, I was freezing to death one night. And I was going down South Pearl Street in the back, and I was getting pizza from the dumpster of the pizza place. Sexy Pizza is the name of it, Sexy Pizza. And I was getting pizza from the Sexy Pizza dumpster, and I happened to notice that like next door was this burnt out restaurant. And I was like, well, it's like nobody's ever here. I've noticed that the deadest place on South Pearl is this old burnt out restaurant. And then I just went in there one night. I just figured out like how to get in there. I went up on the roof, I believe. Like one time I was like, yeah, I'm going to just risk it. And I went up on the roof kind of risky off of like a fence or something. Yeah, it was risky when I first went in there because I had to figure out a way in to let myself in and out. But once you're in, you're in. Once you're in through the top window or something like that, when you leave, you can just leave the door unlocked, or you can leave some part of the house unlocked, so you can just come back in whenever you want to. And nobody really ever knows to check that lock at that particular time of day or whatever when you're gone or whatever. And so I use this to live in a burnt out restaurant with a light bulb socket screw. I used a light bulb socket screw for like fucking, I lived in that place for 2.5 years, something like that. I mean, I crashed on a couch quite a lot in a flop house during that time, and I was in and out of people's houses. I had a girlfriend, I lived at her house. There was other stuff going on, but like, this little light bulb socket trick, it actually has saved my life before. There's stuff to understand. If there's a light bulb socket, you can get a power source, and that's actually very powerful if you are an intruder. If you're an intruder, like, a light bulb socket is everything, and that means that you can turn, like, what I'm trying to say is, you can turn, like, I'm not afraid to do this either, like, you can go to an office building, and you can find a crappy office, office supply room that people don't use, and you could easily hole up in there for probably like 4 days or something like that. You easily could. You could just go in there, plug in the little light bulb strip thing, run a surge protector, and then boom, you can charge a cell phone, you can charge a laptop, you can charge your headphones, you can run headphones on a laptop and play video games, and all that other stuff, and you can sit in there like a guerrilla camper, like a guerrilla urban camper. I've done it many times before, and you can just use a light bulb socket. I used to carry this little adapter in my backpack because I knew how powerful it was, and I would get these stolen from me when other people on the street would go through my backpack because I'd be sleeping on the fucking street and shit like this. They would see this and steal it from me because they'd never seen anything that amazing. And yeah, when you're an intruder, or you're not welcome, or you're hiding, or you're squatting, this little tool is invaluable. I think it's more valuable than, like, I don't know, like food stamps and stuff. This little tool, this will empower you as a homeless person so much more than you might think. When you have power from any situation, basically. Like, I remember I used to unscrew light bulbs at the fucking library and screw this thing in and run power from the library socket that I slept at when I was a homeless bum, just so I could charge my phone, And that's a good tip. It is a good tip for people who might have the same sort of personality as me. It might end up facing the elements as I did for many years. This stuff will save your life. Understanding that any light bulb socket can be turned into a power source is a really powerful thing, and people don't protect their light bulbs either. I used to steal quite a lot of light bulbs because methamphetamine addicts use light bulbs. If you take a salt shaker from a restaurant, you pour the salt into a light bulb, and you shake the light bulb till all of the white phosphorus dust is gone from the inside of the light bulb, or whatever is in there. Usually it's like white dust or white like paint and that kind of thing. And so you use the salt or sand or dirt, or like any meth addict knows this. Like if you ever been a meth, I think some people probably think I'm lying about that, but no, the light bulb loved me quite a lot. And so I would take salt or sand or pieces of metal or like broken lighters and stuff like this, and I would like shake them around in the light bulb. Like old school tweakers know this trick. People who have been doing it for like all their lives and stuff. You shake the light bulb, and then you take a straw and you take some tape, and you break the top of the tip of the light bulb socket so you can get in with a pair of pliers and break out the pieces of glass that are inside the light bulb, and then you've got nothing but a glass bulb. That's it. There's no light inside anymore. It's just the light bulb itself, which is what you're after. You break the black. There's this black glass on the top of every light bulb, and you smash it with the bottom of the pliers wires, and I used to show people this all the time, and I would crack the bottom of the light bulb. They're like, do you got a bubble? And I'd be like, no, I don't have a bubble, but there's a fucking light bulb somewhere. And they're like, a light bulb somewhere? What do you mean? And I'd be like, I can turn any light bulb into a meth pipe. And they're like, no, you can't. And it's like, yes, you can. Yes, I can. And so you take salt or sand, and you run it all up and around inside the light bulb and stuff to get all that nasty, poisonous, sulfurous out like phosphorus. It's like phosphorus out of that light bulb and shit. And then you run water in it. You like get all, so you can get all the chemical in the water, and then you dump the water out, and you boil the rest of the water out of the glass, and then you've got a perfectly, like, you know, I would say almost like, I would say it's fairly sterile too. It's like fucking sterile. It doesn't have a lot of germs on it, because it's the inside of the light bulb that was entirely on the inside until you just broke into it. So it's a fairly sterile environment for drugs too. You won't get disease off of it. You won't get Hep C off of light bulbs and shit like that. So and then you dump like a quarter of a gram or something in the bottom of the light bulb, and then you take a lighter and you cook the meth. And you take a straw and you tape the straw inside. You take the straw, you stick in a quarter of the straw inside the light bulb. And I've done this so many times in my life. And then you tape up the fucking straw with the light bulb. And that's how you make a meth pipe anywhere. I'm talking anywhere. If you got a motel room, there's gonna be a light bulb. If you've got a shack or a fucking like a bathroom, there's gonna be a light bulb. There's gonna be a light bulb there. And so if you ever wonder why people steal light bulbs, that's why. Light bulbs are like a whole tweaker thing. When you're a cashier at a gas station, Brillo pads get stolen by crackheads. So if your 7-Eleven or your gas station sells Brillo pads, at least 2 to 5 of those get stolen like every day. And for some reason the 7-Eleven still continues to sell them, because I think they actually make a lot of real good money, and Brillo pays them good money, I think. And so they sell Brillo pads, but it's weird because crackheads will steal Brillo pads. It doesn't matter where the fucking 7-Eleven is. It doesn't matter how much business it does or how much people it sees or anything. Crackheads steal Brillo pads from fucking 7-Elevens. It's just a fact of life. And tweakers steal light bulbs. Tweakers like me. I'm the king of tweakers, and I don't like being the king of tweakers, but I mean, king of tweakers knows all the tricks, and one of the tricks is, yeah, there's a meth pipe wherever you look. If there's a room with a light bulb in it, I'll steal the light bulb, and I'll be like, oh, your light bulb went out, so I threw it away, or whatever. I've said that one before a whole bunch of times. Your light bulb went out, and I kept screwing with this, so then I just threw it away. And they're like, okay, and they just don't check for the light bulb in the trash can or whatever. But yeah, you just stole their light bulb, which is a very good meth pipe. It's actually one of the better meth pipes, believe it or not. It's actually, in terms of how meth works, meth pipes can be fairly wasteful because the vapor goes right out the fucking carb hole pretty badly. But light bulbs don't waste product at all. And I actually used to prefer them because they don't waste profit. Like, they don't waste I think of it as money. It's like money, basically. Light bulbs do not waste product at all because the vapor doesn't go anywhere but in your lungs. It's in the light bulb. It stays in the light bulb. And you're sucking, and you have to have two carbs if you have a light bulb. You have the straw going in, and then either a hole for the carb or another straw. You've either got to have two straws, one you plug and one you don't, or you just run one straw with a carb hole in the hole you made in the tape. You know, you make a carb hole in the tape. And so I used to carry around light bulbs with straws in them. And that's how you knew. That's how you knew. That's how, if you met me, you would have seen that I had a light bulb with a straw in it, because I like those things. They're more efficient than fucking meth pipes. They don't ever waste vapor at all. You can get the entire hit. I'm talking 100%. You can get the whole hit. Pretty much every product from this hash pen to meth pipes, to crack pipes, to everything out there. It'll waste products so terribly. And you got to remember, some people might have risked their lives to get that product to you, to sell to you for $100 or whatever. Some people might have gone to jail. Some people might have lost their freedom. Some people might have like sold themselves or been trafficked for it. Like that drug, like that you have in that sack, it's like the amount of damage and problems that might have been caused by it just being there. You have to kind of wonder, like, you know, if it's okay to waste that drug, which is not. And so every crazy drug addict I've ever met, every junkie I've ever met, tried to tell me that anybody who didn't use needles was an asshole. And I've had this my whole life since I was like 20 years old. I've had people tell me this, that anybody who does drugs, like hard drugs, who doesn't use needles are fucking assholes. And they are right. They're right about this. This is something like, I don't know if you've ever been a fucking complete drug fiend, but I have. And like something that you don't really find out right away is that, yeah, people that smoke drugs like me, we are incredibly fucking wasteful. We're so wasteful. We just burn that product up that costs $210 a gram or whatever sometimes. It just goes right up into the atmosphere half the time. Half the smoke goes right up into the atmosphere while you're burning it. It's disgusting. And so a good heroin addict who chases a dragon, they take the entire hit and they don't miss a single bit of that smoke or anything like that. And I'm good at that. I'm good at not wasting product. I'm not good at wasting product. I'm very good at preserving product. So I would show up and I would buy, rather than buying the whole gram for 50 or 70 or $100, I would buy a 20 sack every single day. And I would show up to the dealer. I'd be like, sell me a 20, sell me a 20. And they're like, I don't like selling 20s. None of them ever did like selling 20s. They don't like doing that. But you tell them, like, come on, just sell me a 20. It doesn't have to be a gram or whatever. Come on, sell me a 20. Sell me a fifth of a gram or something for $20. And they're like, okay. And so they sell you like a 20. And I got very used to using light bulbs to make that 20 sack last for like 3 fucking days. I mean, a lot longer than that, like 5 or 6 days, and you don't eat, you barely sleep. You're just up for 6 days like some kind of super machine or whatever. I like telling stories like this because it's like I actually did that reality for a long time, and it's very bad for you, but I absolutely did it. I like full-blown did it. I know the lifestyle. I know the tricks. I know everything that they do. All the bullshit that they pull, all the lies they tell. Like, okay, there's this thing that methamphetamine addicts and heroin addicts like do to you. They're like, come wake me up. They're like, come wake me up, or come get, and what they really mean is come get them high because they're getting sick. But they'll be like, come wake me up. And that's a scam. That's another human being trying to scam you. All they're trying to do is get you to get them high. That's it. And they'll be like, come wake me up, or come get me better, or you know, I'm sick, I need help. Help me out. You know, help me out, I'm fiending, I need something. You know, that kind of stuff. That's the worst scam ever, because if they were good fucking drug addicts, they would just have supply. They would have products and they wouldn't worry. That's how I was my entire time I was a drug addict. I always had supply. Almost always. Never had a problem getting it. And like, I don't know. I always had my own supply. I was the guy who people get mad. You know what people get mad at me for? You're smoking too much. You know, that's literally what I got a lot from the flop house. When you get your smoking too much from the flop house, that's how you know that I'm like, just, you know, I'm in it for myself and I'm just trying to get as high as fucking possible. Because I used to get people at the flop house being like, you're smoking too much. Whenever I look at you, you have a pipe in your mouth. It's like this pen. This pen is the exact same thing. It's the exact same thing as what I used to do. So all the time I'm hitting this pen or whatever, and they're like, you smoke too much. I used to get this from people on my stream too. I'd be like, stop paying attention to what I'm smoking. It doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. It never has mattered. It's never mattered what I smoke, like whatever, or how much or whatever. It doesn't matter. So yeah. But that was honestly the biggest complaint I ever got as a drug fiend, was they would be like, you smoke too much. You smoke like a fucking chimney. And I did. I smoked like a chimney. If it wasn't cigarettes, it was full blown meth. Like, it was one or the other, and I would just smoke meth and cigarettes like they were going out of fucking style. you know? Smoke meth and cigarettes like a choo-choo train. Fucking terrible. And they would be like, you're smoking too much, you're smoking too fast, you eat too much, you eat too fast, you fuck too much, you fuck too fast, you like you break too many rules, you just break too many laws all the time. I would get that too. You break too many laws all the time and you just don't even care that they're there. And I was like, yep, I don't. I really don't. Like you know, or that kind of thing. And they'd be like, you do this too much or you do that too much. I would get that quite a lot. They'd be like, you are this insatiable drug fiend who's just sitting here talking to me about how much you're fiending for dope right now. Yeah. Volunteer for the patrol. Is this a daily? I don't want to do daily. I don't know. It's 9:40, guys. I believe I'm going to stop because I've been up since 5 in the fucking morning combating a terrible episode of constipation. I fear that I might have to do that again. So I'm just going to go do that for the next 2 hours and hydrate for 2 hours while I watch some movie or something. And I'm just going to stop here, guys. I'm terribly sorry I'm out of it. I hope I entertained you with my depraved drug talk and all my problems and everything. And I love you guys. It's been a long 6-hour session. Yeah, it's only been 6 hours. Yeah. Oh, yeah, because I did the first 4 hours on Twitch. Yeah, with just DMCA. So, yes, this session is ending. You've been watching Skycatlive. I'm a full-time variety gamer all day, every day. Put me on in the background. Click on the cat's face to donate. Come to the Twitch or the YouTube. Give me a like, sub, or a follow. And I'm going to stop this recording here after saying that I have thousands of videos on my YouTube channel, which is reflected on one of these. I don't know. I'm just going to go load it. Excuse me. My channel content, which is here. And I have thousands of videos on my YouTube channel. Looks like a lot of the views have dropped off, but that's okay. I don't care. And yeah. And so I love you guys. Thank you so much for paying attention to me. I am going to bed now, and the video is going to end, and this stream is going to end in 90 seconds. But I'm going to publish this